Live from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the Total Education Show, a talk shop for teachers, parents, and administrators. Here's your host of the show, Neil Haley, the Total Tutor.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. The number again is 805-285-9736. Exciting show tonight that we're about to have. Our guest tonight is going to be GJ Reynolds. I'm going to introduce him in a second. Please go to my website at www.totaltutor.org. And tonight, Pamela Owens, you're going to be my co-host tonight. And thanks for calling in the program to ask questions for me to ask GJ questions. Thanks for calling.
You're quite welcome.
All right. And also now I want to welcome my guest tonight, GJ Reynolds. GJ, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself. Our topic tonight is going to be the role of mentors and coaches, but I want to know more about you.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show, and I love Pittsburgh. I grew up a Pittsburgh Steelers fan in the heart of Louisiana, so there's one bullet point most people don't realize. I was a big Terry Bradshaw fan because he was a Louisiana boy. So a little bit about me. Grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and moved to Kansas. So I lived in a big city and moved to a small town and took the normal path to, education, go get a good education, which I did. Next thing you know, I'm in the United States military. Spent 5 years in the military, and I spent 5 years in the corporate world for a little company which is now called Verizon. And then struck out on my own 20 years ago as an entrepreneur, and I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, what makes a successful entrepreneur, and also what can create failure. And obviously one of the key components of being successful as an entrepreneur is having a good coach or mentor, and we'll get more into that. And consequently, I ran into some tough times about 10 years ago. I was depressed, I was suicidal, and then I just came out with the book, The Playful and Powerful Warrior Within You, which you can get at powerfulwarrior.com or Amazon.com and iBooks and all the different book sources. And it's about how to go from being suicidal and depressed to living a successful life, and and the challenges that go along with that. And what prompted me to write that book is I deal with thousands of entrepreneurs all across the country, Canada, and the Caribbean, and a lot of them are all dealing with different personal issues. And so I wrote the book to share that with other people.
And what you're saying, a lot of entrepreneurs, GJ, a lot of times hit rock bottom in their growth to finally be successful if they are. That they think out of the box, unlike lots of people that want just a 9-to-5 job. They just have this calling, this thought process that, guess what, I want to do something really special in my life, and I believe that I'm creative enough to come up with some marketing strategy to be an entrepreneur, but sometimes success doesn't happen overnight, does it?
Well, that's true, and what I like to say is, and I don't drink, so I want to make sure everybody understands that. But create, it's like creating a fine wine. It takes time, and creating a business and creating a lifestyle and being a strong, person within your lifestyle does require time, and it does require effort.
All right, well, great. The first question I'll ask then, Pamela, will. Now, what mentors and coaches were very inspirational in your life, GJ?
Well, I've had many, and what I've learned is that most people have come into one's life to teach us something, and I've had many, and two of the profound ones that have had the biggest influence outside of my grandparents and my parents is Coach Dale Brown, who was the coach at LSU for 25 years, and I met him at age 11, and I've been very blessed to have an ongoing relationship with him. He's become one of my best friends. He's 75 years old, and he's sharp as a tack. And he started teaching basic life skills in addition to basketball skills, and I was really enthralled in the basketball, and that was my sport of choice and the sport that I excelled at. And then his mentor was John Wooden, who was the great coach of UCLA, and
yes,
won 10 championships in 12 years, and he passed away this past year. And and Coach introduced me to him in 1973, along with Aldo Frupp, who at the time was the winningest coach of all time, and John Wooden's teachings, have impacted millions of people, and I was very fortunate to meet him. I was able to reconnect with him in 2007 and in 2008, and just his teachings and his mentorship, directly and indirectly, have helped mold me to the man I am today.
Okay, Pamela, a question for him so far. You want me to hit? I'm sure with you being a writer, Pamela, I think you have a good question when you're talking about, first he's talked about those mentors. And it's very interesting.
Right.
I'm a big basketball fan, GJ, and a big University of Pittsburgh fan, but also I was a big Shaquille O'Neal fan when Dale Brown coached him. So I understand Dale Brown, and I also read his book on coaching. I was thinking about, I'm a school teacher, but I was thinking of coaching basketball, and I read his book, and it was really good. But go ahead, Pamela, with a question.
Yes, my question is about entrepreneurship, because that's what I do now, and I was a former teacher, and I was also formerly in corporate America, all of them together, and I have found having a mentor myself, but also being a mentor to others has been so helpful to me and so inspirational to me. I can see the importance of it with students. I have taught students from preschool all the way through graduate school, and now I focus on graduate and postgraduate students. And although we meet because they need help with their writing and they need editing services, what it ends up to be over time, because each student, I usually work with them for a year to 2 to 3 years as they get their degree, it turns into much more than just, editing. It turns into a mentorship relationship. And so I'd like to know your thoughts of being a mentor yourself to others.
Well, first of all, thanks for sharing that. And one of the things that I'm going to touch on what you said is you start out, teaching someone, and then that turns into more of a personal relationship, and then that bond that exists, helps. It's like glue; it sticks, and then that relationship becomes stronger and stronger, and the bonding becomes stronger, and then the ability to truly help someone is elevated. And I believe the true definition of a mentor is somebody that truly cares about other people and truly cares about the people that they're mentoring, and they truly want to see them have the success. And a lot of times the success that of the people they're mentoring may be much greater than what their success was. And
exactly.
Shaquille O'Neal is a great example. And I can tell you a great story about Shaquille O'Neal, which I also share in my book, from Dale Brown. And Dale Brown still is a mentor to Shaquille. And, of course, Shaquille, look at the impact that he has, not just from LSU and the fans of the NBA, worldwide. I mean, he has a worldwide presence. And a lot of times when I tell people who Dale Brown is, they sort of look at me, and I say, do you know Shaquille O'Neal? And they go, yes. So Shaquille O'Neal is a great example who was mentored at a young age. Dale Brown came in his life at age 13. And if you'd like me to go into that story, I will. So
sure, definitely.
I don't want to just ramble.
No, that's fine. Well, you're on an educational show tonight, GJ. So anything that you can educate us on mentoring and coaching is fine with me. And Pamela and I are both educators, so go ahead. We're interested in this story.
Well, I think this will hit all ages, and anybody that's looking to anybody that's young enough to know, say, hey, I want to go and do something, or I want to go be something, and they're focused and committed about doing that, and they know in their own mind that's what they want to do, this would be applicable. So Shaquille O'Neal, Dale Brown was over in Germany speaking, and all of a sudden he spoke, and then after his speech, he gets tapped on the shoulder, and it was all soldiers that he was speaking to. And all of a sudden, he gets tapped on the shoulder, and Coach Brown turns around, and all of a sudden he looks up, and there's this about 6'5", 6'7", big, tall kid. And of course, then Shaquille was a lot, thinner and lanky at that point in time. And he said, Coach, I really enjoyed your speech, and I'd like to, get a few pointers because I'm, doing out for basketball. And Coach says, well, soldier, how long have you been in the Army? And Shaquille just grins and big grin, and he goes, Coach, I'm not in the Army. I'm only 13 years old. And so he goes, well, what are you doing here? He goes, my father's in the military. My father's over there. So he said, well, why don't you get your father and bring him over here? So his father comes over, and Coach Brown's talking to both of them, and so he shows Shaquille certain, exercises to help improve his job. And he goes, thanks a lot. Now, Coach Brown, being the recruiter, and already seeing that this guy at 13 is 6'6", 6'7", he could grow into being a great basketball at this time. And at age 13, you never know. So he told his dad, says, if he ever wants to go on and play college basketball, I'd look forward to, have him play for me. And his dad says, I don't care about sports. Sports are great. However, education is what it's all about.
That's great.
I want to have a son that has education so that no matter what happens outside of sports, he can go and be something and do something and be whatever he wants to be. He says, now, if you can talk about education, then I'm interested maybe talking about basketball. And so Coach was a little taken back. He says, I guarantee if he comes to LSU, I guarantee, regardless how long it takes, I will make sure he gets an education, even if it takes him 25 years. You have my commitment. So anyway, about 6 weeks later, he gets a letter from Shaquille O'Neal, and it says, Dear Coach, thank you for everything that you taught me. I went and applied it, and I went out for basketball. I didn't make the team. My coach told me to give up basketball forever. Focus on soccer.
Oh, no.
So Coach ended up responding. He didn't know what to say, and he says, Dear Shaquille, here's what I found in times of strife, is to always focus on doing your best. As long as you focus on doing your best, then that's the best you can do. And so anyway, they from that point on, they built a relationship. He went to LSU. He left early to go in the pros. And Shaquille O'Neal came back and went to school and ended up graduating at LSU. So the coach fulfilled his obligation to Shaquille, to his father, and Shaquille did the same for his father. And, of course, the rest of the story is Shaquille. He's one of the top 5 centers of all time.
Great story. I mean, that's fantastic. And I think that the bottom line is you see that how somebody can make a difference in someone's life, and you might just not expect that meeting that person, and how that person can make an impact so quickly to change someone's life. And can you give me an example of how that has happened in your life? You were talking just kind of specifically, but give us another story of a way how you have had, you talked about Dale Brown, but later on, especially when you're looking to become an entrepreneur, who made that influence, that great influence that really got you going?
Well, that's a great question. I'm going to answer it in two components. The first thing is what got me excited about being an entrepreneur wasn't that I had any desire to go be an entrepreneur. I had no knowledge about being an entrepreneur, and when I became an entrepreneur, I didn't even know the word of entrepreneur. So, obviously entrepreneurism has become more of a mainstream term, but at the time it was like I just wanted to go work for myself because I felt I could do more and achieve more. And I believe most people, and I'm willing to bet every one of your listeners, they know no matter what they're doing, maybe they've got a great job. Maybe they're in school and they're just going through education. They're saying, I want to get an education to go and be whatever they want to be. And the key is everyone that I've come in contact typically wants to achieve more. They know inside of them that greatness exists. They just don't know exactly how to always unlock it and reclaim it within, and then go in and execute on it. And Pamela, is a good example where she's helping them through school, and all of a sudden, I'm willing to bet some of the bonding and some of the relationship, and because you truly care about that person, they end up saying, hey, I can do this. I can go excel. And somebody cares about me, and there's a safety net there, which is one of the key components of being successful, is surrounding yourself with people that truly care about you and see you for who you are and where you can go, not for what you're not or what you have. And that's a real key component.
That is so very true. In my business of editing, you can find a lot of places on the web that will take a piece of paper and show you where your commas are wrong or your sentence structure is wrong, and you can pay them $50 and they'll straighten out your grammar. But the services that I provide are so much more than that. And this is what my students find out. And I enjoy it as much as they get, I get as much from them as they get from me. But that's the difference between just, getting your paper corrected for grammar and having someone guide you through the university process, which is not easy. A lot of my students are far, far, far away from home. They're living on a stipend. They're trying to take care of their families. They have full-time jobs, trying to get their degrees, and navigating through all of that, and just knowing that someone is there for them. And to listen to them and to listen to them when they're very, very frustrated and things aren't going correct, going right or whatever. It makes all the difference in the world, and it gets them, every step of the way as it gets more and more difficult. The longer that they're in school, and so it is extremely important. The thing that you said that was most important is having someone who cares about you for who you are and what you can be.
Right.
Not just correct
right.
not just correct your sentence structure. So.
Right. Well, okay. So did I get an A or did I get a B?
No, you got.
Did I get a red check? Did I pass?
No, you didn't get a. No, you didn't get.
I'm teasing.
I know. I get that all the time. Believe me. This is another story, and I'm going to come back to the mentorship. When I was writing my book, one of the first people I shared my book with was my mom. My mom is a librarian. She was an English major in college, so I sent her my book, and she read 23 pages, and it came back to me, and she would send me these edits, after every chapter. So she wasn't waiting to read the whole book and send it to me. She was giving me every chapter. Every chapter was so read, I couldn't read the actual text that I wrote. And I'm like, here I am, a grown man, and I feel like I'm back in school. My mom's grading my papers, and I'm not passing. I don't know, maybe I'm not on the right path. But going back to one component on people carrying a mentor or people that you surround yourself with, is that a lot of times I see people, and this is a real key point that for the listeners, is that a lot of times we're around people who are the negative people or the naysayers.
Yes.
You can't, you won't, why would you, you're stupid, you're crazy, and a lot of times it's their jealousy, a lot of times it's their own ignorance, a lot of times it's their jealousy, or they're afraid that person's going to leave behind, which is a fear motivation. And so the one thing I can share is that surround yourself with people who are going to help build you up and believe in you. And sometimes it's good to hear the negatives because, hey, we want to stay going down the path, and it's okay to take an off ramp and come back on, but you want to stay on the main path. And so surrounding yourself with people that are caring and truly believe in you, which leads into the point that you asked me about mentorship for me personally. 10 years ago, in June, it'll be 10 years, I walked out on my back deck. I was a type A personality. I was successful. I got promoted as fast as I could in the military. I had a college degree. I was in the corporate world. I went up as fast as I could. I started to have success as an entrepreneur finally, and all of a sudden everything just stopped. And I found myself in depression and suicide, and I went out on my deck one day to end it all.
Oh my!
And I heard the words. Here's the good news: I didn't do it. That was a joke.
I know, I got it.
All right.
No. So, sometimes
right.
we can book ghosts, right, GJ? Okay, continue.
So, well, one of the words in my title of my book is playful. So I like to be playful. So anyway, so I went out there, and at the moment of that deepest point, I'm hearing a voice. You have a reason to live. And I also heard in my mind, never give up. One of the things that Coach Brown instilled in me at age 11 is always come from your best and never give up. And so I'm hearing that in my head. Come from my best. Never give up. You have a reason to live. So I knew God was talking to me. I could hear Dale Brown's voice in my head, and it just grabbed me. And next thing you know, it shook me up. And here I am today. There's more to that story, and it's in the book. However, the point is that the mentorship that he gave me from age 11 to age 40 saved my life.
That's great.
That's the power of a mentor.
And no, DJ, when you were hitting rock bottom, and luckily again through God and then through some of your other mentors, how can you offer advice now? You be a mentor for somebody that's, let's say, in college, and they've done, because again, this is an educational talk show, but this is a great way to ask you this question, offering advice, because I know that's what you can do, because you've gone through that hard road into success, and you had some real big pitfalls. What if it's a student that's been an A student through high school, gets a full scholarship to college, and then starts to struggle? What advice would you offer them? Like, where they finally are getting that first C or that D, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my scholarship completely. What am I going to do? I'm going to have to go home, and I'm never going to get my opportunity to get my college education. What kind of advice would you offer them?
Well, I'm going to do one step further. So I'm going to share a story with an actual person that this happened to, which is along the lines of what you just described. He was a good student in high school. He was a 4-year letterman, and he picked up the sport of throwing the javelin. And how many people throw the javelin? Only 11 states in the country have the javelin in high school. He picks up the javelin. He's a 4-year letterman. He goes to state. He's one of the top in the state. He gets a scholarship to go to junior college. His freshman year, he goes to live on his own because he wanted that freedom to live on his own. He had a part-time job to help, pay his, some of his incidentals. He had a full ride. He also had, it wasn't a trust fund, but, the equivalent of some money set aside for him to apply to school expenses. And then of course, he had his car. And then he had to go to, took all these classes. And he took all these hard classes thinking, hey, I'm going to get all the hard classes out of the way. Next thing you know, he struggled in school. His grades started dropping. He was struggling. Do I go to work? Do I go to school?
Right.
Do I study? And all the different struggles hit him. And here he is. He was a great kid and had done everything asked of him. And he had a good vision of where he wanted to go in life. He becomes an All-American. So, to become an All-American junior college, you have to be in the top 6. So he's a top 6 qualifier, throws it. Right now, he's out of school because it became overwhelming. So this past semester, last fall, he was struggling with all the different components, actually ended up on academic probation, and he's like, what do I do?
Right.
And he goes, I'm confused. That was the exact words he said. I am confused. Now, this is what he shared with me. And I said, the first thing is, where do you want to go? What do you want to do?
Yes.
And let's take a step back. And let's just start going one step at a time instead of trying to jump up the whole flight of stairs. And so now he's back on point. He's re-enrolled to go next semester, fall semester. He's doing great and everything. He's more balanced. And so he had to take a step back to move 5 steps forward. Now that kid that I'm talking about is my 19-year-old son.
Oh, okay.
And so it's a personal example. And I know there's a lot of kids out there that are doing the right things. And so what I would say to anyone is, it's not where you're going, it's where you're at, and you can always choose to restart. It's a life process. It's a journey. It's not a one-time thing.
Yeah, but DJ, and it's very interesting. I guess I'm going to tell this on national radio, which is hilarious. That basically, I'm a full-time school teacher, and I also own a tutoring company called Total Tutor. And and my school is about to merge with another school, so I will possibly be out of a job. Well, through some soul searching, I've decided to kind of maybe decide to take a step back and really focus on my business and maybe take a little bit of try to pick up some other side deals in consulting instead of continue to teach, because I see that truly that's my passion. That's what I really want to do in life. And I really truly think I can make more of a difference. But I had to step back in a second. I could have kept teaching, hardly saw my family, working 80 hours a week just because, okay, I'm doing well financially. But now I'm seeing I need to do what's going to be great to be with my family, but also help tons of people. So I'm about to make, I guess, that decision that I'm ultimately going to stop teaching and be continue to tutor, educate people, run Total Tutor, and do the radio, because I think that this truly gives a great message. But again, I had to step back and say, I need to develop more balance in my life as well, or I'm going to fall apart and I'm going to have a nervous breakdown or something like you dealt with, GJ. So again, it's great to see that what you're saying is taking that step back and really looking at your life and saying, am I really going in the right direction? And I'm going to bring up my faith, GJ. That's ultimately the thing is this really what God wants you to do? Don't you agree?
And I agree wholeheartedly. First of all, thanks for sharing where you're at, where you're going, and some of those challenges, that can be scary. And the one thing I'll say is that when it's all said and done, it's where you're going to go when your life has expired. Where are you going? It's between you and your Maker, and so that's what is really ultimately important. And one of the things that I can say is that the more you become look inward at who you are instead of looking externally, because a lot of times the chaos and the struggles that happen to everyone is because it's the measurement of looking at everybody else. Well, that person got done with their degree in 4 years. Well, I was on the 9-year program. It took me 9 years to get my degree, and they don't call me doctor. So sometimes you just have to look what's best for you. And the one thing I can say, the more you look within, and the more focused you are on yourself, the more the answers will start to materialize. And in your spirit what's best for you. And right now you're recognizing that. And you say, hey, there's a better way for myself. And I know that's happening to a lot of your listeners, is that they know there's a better way. They're just not sure what to do. And one of the key things is definitely get around people who care about you, that can help you find those answers when the answers are sometimes, let's just say hidden. Even though they're not hidden, they appear to be hidden. It's an illusion of being hidden. However, sometimes a mentor or a coach can help draw that out. And I use an analogy, obviously, we love basketball. And, they have, all those players have a coach. Look at golf. The greatest golfers, and I know there's some negatives tied to Tiger Woods with some of the antics he's done in the last couple of years. However, when he's on, he's the greatest golfer out there. He has a swing coach. And he even changed his swing so that he could be a better golfer. Yes. And he was the number one golfer in the world. Now, look, he hasn't won anything. It just goes to show there's some mental things and how mental golf is and how that can be a struggle. However, he's retooled his swing so that he can become a greater golfer than what he's been in the last 14, 15 years.
Oh, wow.
And, and that can be the same thing. And whatever you are doing in your life, that's what I would recommend. Get with somebody who can help coach you and mentor you where you want to go.
Absolutely.
So find somebody that's been there. It's like when we go to school, the teacher knows, if you're taking accounting, the teacher knows accounting. They're teaching what they know.
Correct.
And outside of school, sometimes that's hard to find, and we struggle in the real world, and especially when it becomes how do I be an entrepreneur? Because there's no one teaching you how to be successful, or teaching you how to be a successful entrepreneur. And I failed my first venture. I spent all my money, and here I am 20 years later, and I'm still an entrepreneur because I finally said, if I'd had a mentor and a good coach in the beginning, say, hey, here's what to do, here's what not to do, here's when to do this, here's when to do that, I would have been successful from the get-go.
Okay. Now, Pamela, Here's the question. Now, we've been talking about this, an entrepreneur, and how the risks and the rewards, and when you look at yourself, and then GJ can kind of add this to it, when you decided to go to your own business, and I don't know if you retired as a teacher or you decided that this isn't ultimately for me in the classroom, I can make a better difference with my business. Tell me your story for a second, and then GJ can comment, because it's a great... Okay. Yeah.
I'll tell my story quickly, and I also wanted to add something about what he was saying about being self-motivated. But first, my story. I was a teacher for many years, a teacher and a consultant in education for many years. But something always led me to sales. I always wanted to go into sales. And at the time I grew up, in the time that I graduated from college, you were supposed to go just like G said. You were supposed to go get a good job, a steady job, etc. But something always drew me to business and always drew me to sales. And so I left and went to the corporate world. I did very, very well there. And but then that was in the late 80s, when there was the first round of a lot of corporate layoffs. So I was laid off 4 different times. And so then I said, well, let me go back to teaching, because that's a steady job and a steady paycheck. Yeah, so I did that for a while, and then I was injured, and I literally had to take a leave of absence. But in the meantime, I was still in sales. And so I was able to, the type of direct selling I was doing, I could do that even while I was recovering, which was a 4-year recovery process. And then I went back into teaching, because we had to get a second mortgage on our house, and I needed a real job for that. And then I left that again and went into business again. And this particular venture that I started 3 years ago, I said, well, maybe I should get a job. But by that time, I had been in the workforce for over 35 years, and I had 2 degrees, and I went out looking for a job, and this young lady who was younger than all 3 of my children offered me a job for $21,000. I said, wait a minute. Just like you said, I said, I can do better than that for myself. And so that was in April. And in June of that year, my husband allowed me to sit right in front of the computer for the entire month. I taught myself how to start a writing and editing business. And it has expanded beyond what I ever thought I would do. But I had to make up my mind, number one, that I was worth much more than $21,000 a year.
Exactly.
And then I could do that. And so because of that, a little bit of the law of attraction, I expected it to be successful. I worked very, very hard at it. When you are working for yourself, you work harder than you work when you go to a 9-to-5 job.
Absolutely. That's true. And when I'm torn, because the fact is that the reward that you have is basically you have created it yourself. You are the artist, and you're an entrepreneur. So that's why I want to go back to GJ. I wanted to hear your story, Pamela, because I know that, and you're so interesting, GJ. I've enjoyed this so much, this interview. And
I wanted to ask him about the self-talk, because that is so important when you are feeling depressed and when you are feeling down. He said he heard a voice, and some of the self-talk that you give to yourself can make a difference on whether you succeed or you fail. One of my mentors, I'll never forget this, one of my mentors when I was in direct sales, one of her favorite phrases, if she made a mistake about something, she never said, oh, that was stupid. She always said, instead of saying, oh, that was stupid, I did something, she said, that was super intelligent. And to return instead of saying that was stupid, she always said that was super intelligent. That turned the whole perception around. What she did was probably so stupid, but calling it super intelligent just changed the whole thing from negative to positive. Now, since I'm so intelligent, what can I do to change the situation?
Great question. Go ahead.
Is that a question for me?
Yeah, that's a question for me.
I just want to lead into how self-talk can also help make the difference between being depressed and finding your way towards success.
Go ahead.
All right. Before we go, can I make a comment to I think 2 things that you shared about your story?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. One of the things is that you ran into a situation and then you took a job, and it sounded like you took the job and you settled. Is that a fair assessment?
That's exactly what I did. Even though I really enjoyed, because I always enjoyed working with kids. I had never taught high school before. I had taught middle school, and I had taught college. And when I found the job, the principal said, well, you've taught middle school and you've taught college, so you can teach high school. I never taught high school before, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. I love working with kids, but I do not like being bound to a specific schedule.
Me too.
And so, and so when we got the second mortgage on the house, I quit again. I had to do it to get the second mortgage on the house. We did that, and then I quit again and went right back into business. And my students that I had in high school are still coming to me for mentoring, and now they're in their mid-20s.
That's great.
Well, so what's awesome about sharing that is that there's so many of your listeners and some of the people that you come in contact with is that they find themselves in a situation, and then they end up making a choice, and they know they're settling something less than what they're capable of. Sometimes it's the only option out there. And right now, with the way the job market is, sometimes there's a lot of people out there selling. And here's my advice to them. Even though you may be selling, and if you're unsure, look within and look within your spirit, and you'll have the answers. The one thing that I'll say is that all it has to be is a temporary scenario. It might be a year, it might be 2 years. There's also a learning lesson, and everything that you learned at that point, I'm sure, applies in what you're doing right now.
Exactly.
The other component is that by being in tune with who you are, you also find that you've got gifts, and now you're applying them, and the gifting is coming out. And some of those gifts that you may not even knew were there are now being amplified because now you're passionate about what you're doing. And when the passion happens, that's when things really get exciting. And people ask me, well, you're working all the time, GJ. I said, I don't work at all. I live my life. It's because it's a passion, and it's a life choice. And, it took time to get to that point. And so anybody that's listening is that one of the things, and that's one of the best advice I believe I gave my son. I said, son, I don't care if you become an attorney. I don't care if you get your business degree. I said, you find whatever degree you want to do and be passionate about it. So now he's going after his passion, which is animation. He's so passionate about it. And I'm like, every time he talks to me, it's like a whole new person. So you get passionate about what you're doing, which just starts to become life, and that energy is positive.
Exactly.
And then it starts going in every aspect of your life.
Exactly. And it's amazing, because one of my business coaches told me that, if you do this, because I have academic part of my business, and I also have a business part. I work with businesses also. And one of my coaches told me, well, the way you structured your business, you can make $100,000 or more a year. I told him, no, I cannot, because a very important part of my business is working with my students. And I cannot charge my students the same thing that I charge my business clients. But they are so important to me. I enjoy it so much that I will take less of an income just to work with them. Now, let's restructure this business so that this part of it is for business, and I charge my business clients this, but I charge my students half of that. And so let's refocus that, because I'm not going to let go of the parts that I really, really, really enjoy, is working with my students and bringing them up past. I'm never going to have a PhD. Never wanted one, never went after one. But I enjoy getting my students to get their PhDs.
That's fantastic. And GJ, what I'm seeing from talking to Pamela and you, and you know how surprising this is, I had a different guest, and it was so great, my booker Brian finding you last second and saying, wow, this guy is top notch. I cannot wait to talk about mentoring and coaching. And I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I could have just a discussion on Dale Brown for an hour with you if I ever had the opportunity. But one thing I wanted to ask GJ is that you're saying settling. Is it because it's safe? Is it because then I'm not taking a risk? And to be an entrepreneur, you have to take risks. Isn't that true?
It is safe a lot of times, and a lot of times people's choices, whether it's being an entrepreneur or just living life, we take the safe way, or we take what appears to be the secure. However, we are settling, and we know there's something better out there. And look at athletes, and I was an athlete till I was age 40, and now I'm 29, so that's a joke.
I got that one.
Next Monday, next Monday, I turn 50, and I tell everybody I'm 30 years old with 20 years experience. So I played sports, and but I was just an average athlete, but the thing about it is that I learned how to be better and get the most of it. And sometimes it was a coach pushing me or a teammate pushing me and saying, "Hey, you can do that," and they just put in the right things in my head that I said, "Hey, maybe I can do it." And then I started to do it, and I started to reach for more. So I think having a coach and a mentor will help push somebody if it's the right person, mentoring and coaching for the individual, and then that helps eliminate the fear and helps eliminate, the perceived risk. Now, going back to being an entrepreneur, I'd say calculated risk is what is important, not just taking risks.
Yes.
Every risk I've ever taken in business, I felt as though it was a calculated risk. There is some risk. But living life is risk.
Yes.
There's only three things that we control in life. Everything else is a risk or an illusion. It's an illusion. Fear is an illusion. There's three things we control. We control our thoughts, we control our words, we control our actions. Nothing else.
And God's in control of the rest.
And God controls it all, yeah. And God gives us free will to think, have our thoughts, to have our words, and to have our actions. And so, going back to the entrepreneur and the fear and settling, is that by having a coach or mentor, it's a good way to eliminate that and to find out what is right for me as a human being. Whether it's in business, whether it's in education, whether it's in helping other people, and that's what's key. And then going into your thoughts, and I love what your mentor was saying. She took the negative and turned it into positive. And one of the things that I've learned is focus on what you choose to have versus what you choose not to have.
Exactly.
And most people are so focused on choosing what they don't want, that's what they're getting. If you focus on what you do want, eventually you're going to get it. So it's pretty simple.
Exactly.
So going back to what, you used the term law of attraction, the law of attraction, the secret, there's different terminologies. What it really is conscious language. And all it is being aware, consciously and subconsciously, what you are saying, what you're thinking, and how that creates your actions.
Awesome.
And that is exactly right.
I cannot believe we're running out of time. And GJ, we're going to definitely have you back. I do have a couple programs. I have a terrestrial radio station, and also that I'm on a terrestrial show on Fridays. And when I see a topic that comes up that'll be interesting, you really motivate people. So 2 questions. First of all, where can we find more information on your book? And then also, do you do mentoring and coaching like as a part of your profession, as another side thing with your entrepreneurship? I just am interested in knowing those things.
Well, as far as getting my book, you can go to powerfulwarrior.com. It's another way to communicate with me, or simply g.net, which is my personal website. But powerfulwarrior.com to get the book. You can also communicate with me directly. And then as far as coaching and mentoring, I consider myself a coach and a mentor. However, I've never considered myself as a personal coach on an hourly rate. However, I do provide a lot of coaching. And so that was part of the reason why I wrote the book. And the book helps eliminate a lot of the personal coaching. It's much cheaper, for $13.95 is a lot cheaper than paying me a couple $100 an hour.
Sure.
And so, however, I do that, and I teach people how to leverage their time. And Pamela, I can show you how to make that $100,000 do exactly what you're doing, and by creating some leverage and using your skill set. Now that we can do that on a whole nother call. I've had fun here. I get passionate about it, and I would love to be on any of your shows, and we could do a whole call on Dale Brown. And if you wanted to get Dale Brown, I can get him, and he's better than I am.
Oh wow! I think that's perfect for the Total Education Hour. We're going to have to set that up. I will talk to my booker Brian Kress, and we're gonna definitely think about that. I'm a big fan of Dale Brown, and I know how motivating that would be. A great topic to add more to the whole mentoring and coaching thing on the Total Education Hour. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Dale Brown has a not-for-profit all geared for education, and there's two things he's passionate about. It's helping people transform their life in a positive way and education. And he's one of the best.
Well, we could have him just talk about the nonprofit and have you on with him. So I will definitely try to get that set up. That's fantastic. All right, so again, more information really quickly. We've run out of time, but I appreciate you coming on the program.
Well, thank you. It's been a privilege, and thank you, Pamela. And I look forward to learning from both of you as well.
Okay, wonderful.
All right, any more? So you go to powerfulwarrior.com, you said? Is that the website again?
Yes, sir.
Okay, awesome. Well, you have a great evening, GJ. I'll be in touch. I'm going to let Brian know, wow, I got to get this whole thing set up with Dale Brown and you. What a fantastic opportunity that'll be. Thanks again, Pamela. I'll talk to you Friday afternoon at the Total Education Hour. You guys have a great evening. And,
okay, you too.
And my listeners have a great night. We're going to finish with some really interesting music from my nephew. He's a great musician, and we'll finish up with that. Good night, everyone.
Good night.